apart from Ben Hillier, who is basically a member of the band, really, and especially as far as this record was concerned, and William Orbit was as far as the last Blur record. And Norman was the only one. I mean, we tried to work with a lot of people, but Norman was the only one who actually hung out of us and actually sort of was part of, this kind of sort of notion of a gang, which obviously is not applicable when you're 35, but it's a nice idea.
He wanted to play football and stuff, didn't he? He is a really, really talented producer, and he started off his career playing in a band, so he really understands the dynamics of a band, and he could immediately see a few things that weren't particularly obvious to us. Like he could immediately see with a couple of tracks that we needed to start again. We'd gone too far down a blind alley, and that's the kind of thing that we were looking for. Really, we were looking for additional production rather than somebody to be a producer. And it often, if somebody has that kind of production talent that he has, they can just walk in and they can see immediately what needs to happen, and they can rescue you from kind of, disappearing down some cul-de-sac somewhere. And that's what he brought, really. There was a speculation at the time, as there always is when we try out a new producer, that we're going to end up making one of their records rather than they're going to help us make one of our records, which is preposterous, really. It shows an utter lack of understanding about the music making process. But he fitted in very well, and he's this enormous bundle of nervous energy, which is another thing we really kind of needed a shot in the arm at the time, especially in Marrakesh, when the days were quite long and really involved Damon a lot. We all needed a bit of a kick up the arse to get us back making music in the studio together again. So that was really another quite important.
Well, I mean, by that point, it was pretty much just me,
And it was like a lyric writing and lyric recording, some band recording. But what Norman saw was that we all needed to be sitting down with our instruments and going over stuff again. That was what had kind of blocked us, was that we'd stopped doing that.
He's got a PhD in rhythm issues. He's spent a long time studying rhythm, I think.
He's a great producer, and it's a very, very fine line.
You have to understand sound. You have to understand sound to be a good producer. So, whether there's somebody else twiddling the knobs on your behalf. Ben is also very technical, but he's also a musician, and that is for any aspiring producers, engineers, do your grade 8 if you can get that far. Concentrate that far, or just be a musician as well. Don't go into the music business as on the technical side alone. You'll never ever succeed properly. You'll never actually really understand what it is that you're doing unless you're also a musician. And being a musician is, as my granddad always told me, not about music but just about life. Is that 1% inspiration, 90% perspiration, and you will never ever ever become a good musician unless you practice all the time. When I was a kid, I was allowed to go and play the church organ in the village on a Saturday, which is brilliant, at Bach, and that's what I was supposed to be playing, but I was just totally freaked out being in a church on my own, and at the sort of rear view mirror that they had, the organist had, I was constantly looking at it, just thinking there might be a ghost or something in here, and I'd do about a minute of practice, and then the rest of the time I'd just be mucking about, just doing my own thing. I've always, I've never been able to fucking practice properly, so very frustrating. I will probably die not being able to play with all the beautiful music that I could play if I'd practiced. So that's what I'm saying. Anyone who cares to listen, don't ever ever lose heart in practice, because it will take you to a wonderful place in the world if you can. But at the same time, don't lose sight of creativity and your own being an individual. It's that balance. That's all we're talking about, isn't it? Bloody balance.